Hi, everybody. Today we have two presenters for you, Mr. Rick Nelon and Ms. Mary Foyder. Our first presenter, Rick, is a design thinking strategist working for BEYONDigital in Texas. Rick works with a variety of clients to solve today's business challenges and is focused on delivering breakthrough, disruptive technology innovation and concepts through the use of human-centered design. Our second presenter, Mary, is an alumni of IDEO, where she spent over 11 years as a communication designer and most recently as a senior design lead in Chicago. She is passionate about the intersection of design and sexual health and recently started her own studio where she collaborates with clients and other designers. I'm going to hand it over to Rick now so that he can do his presentation.
First of all, I want to thank Angie, Kat, and ITP3 for the opportunity to speak to you about design thinking. If you've used design thinking or have researched design thinking, the methodologies and process we have created here at BEYONDigital will be very familiar to you. I'm Rick Nelon. I'm a design thinking strategist who's been in the design thinking journey for about 7 years. We work with major companies like PepsiCo, Manchester United Soccer Club, Procter & Gamble, Dr. Pepper, Estee Lauder, and we help them to move from a challenge area to desirable prototype. The material I'm presenting has been gathered over the past few years by myself and my peers as we continue to build our practice. You'll see the output and concepts from some of the organizations that we worked with in the past. In our corporate world, a shift has been made to move from solving problems based on basic business-driven approach, which is find a problem, create a big goal, execute against the goal, and hope it works. And now we're going to a user-driven approach. In design-driven approach, we find the needs of the people or users based off of articulated or unarticulated needs and bring human meaning to the technologies or our concepts utilized. In a design-driven approach, we collaborate with the users and iterate with the users to make something of value to the user, which translates to value for the business. We don't start with solutions, we start with people. If you've not heard of design thinking, it's been around since the 60s. However, it was made popular in 1991 by David Kelly. He attended Stanford and co-founded IDEO with his brother Tom. Since then, design thinking, like the word innovation, has become viral, especially within a corporate environment, as a focus. Businesses think it is a buzzword or a silver bullet that will solve the company's problems. However, we know that that buzzword does not solve problems. People do. Using design thinking or human-centered design, you start with people and their needs. If you create a solution to which there is no need, there'll be no value and the solution will fail. However, understanding the articulated and unarticulated needs of people will surface endless possibilities to conceptualize solutions for those needs as long as you continue to focus on the people. And over time, you'll have to maintain the focus on the human needs as well as the trends or business value will dry up. Just ask companies like Encyclopedia Britannica, Blockbuster, or Kodak. So what is design thinking? As with design thinking books, there are several definitions to design thinking as well. At BEYONDigital, we have defined design thinking as a set of tools and a mindset for problem solving and problem finding based off of empathy. If you eliminate the word empathy from this, you're back to solving problems like all other businesses. Over the next few slides, we'll discuss these three elements: the empathy, tools, and mindset. The dictionary defines empathy as the ability to understand and share the feelings of another. We tend to say that empathy is feeling with people, not feeling for people. When you have empathy with someone else, it drives a connection with that person. However, empathy goes beyond feeling, as is seeing with the eyes of the other. It's listening with the ears of another, and it's feeling with the heart of another. There's a cute little video by Brene Brown on YouTube if you want to understand more about empathy and how it is so different from sympathy. But as you work through your innovation for this program, I can empathize with one side because I was once an adolescent male. However, I've never been an adolescent female. Therefore, I would have to see, listen, and feel from her perspective in order for me to understand completely. In our corporate world, I have to do the same thing. I'm currently working with Estee Lauder Corporation and all their major brands. I've learned more about cosmetics, their use, and people's perceptions about cosmetics and beauty. Therefore, you must fully understand the user in order to meet their needs. And to reiterate on that note, Confucius once said, "I hear and I forget, I see and I remember, I do and I understand. This really embodies empathy to its fullest. If you do a search for design thinking methods or processes, you'll see several. They all have about 3 to 6 steps, with the steps being very similar in nature. The process that we utilize at BEYONDigital allows us to move our clients from challenge to solution to drive the business outcomes. We can tailor it to technology solutions, both tactical and strategic, as well as processes and business strategies that our client wants to pursue. We do this through our process that we call Discover, Design, Do. As I mentioned in the definition of design thinking, it embodies a set of tools. There's hundreds of tools that we can use in the process. However, each tool has specific use during the specific phases of the process. In the Discover phase, we use both business and design research to better understand the challenge area. The design research allows us to embed ourselves into the challenge and gain empathy and a perspective of the challenge at hand. Tools like interviewing, observation, journey map, and persona development bring a specific point of view to the challenge and makes the human aspect come alive. In the design phase, we frame the problems or reframe the existing problems based off of context, needs, and goals. In this phase, we generate ideas against those problems. We strive for quantity of ideas because it's in this phase there are no bad ideas. We use the process of diverging and converging through problems, through ideas, and even concepts to make sure that we're meeting the needs of the person. This helps us to sort out the best solution to meet the persona's needs. Tools like Scamper, Constraints Toggle, Industry Swap, and even brainstorming allows us to gain the quantity of ideas that we need. In the Do phase, we move to more of the making. This is where we get to use Legos and Play-Doh, foam board, string, cardboard, pipe cleaners, and so much more. We prototype to gain a visual representation of the solution, as we strive to learn early and fail cheap. This allows us to show the concepts to others and validate against the user's needs. The last but not least valuable portion of the definition is the mindset. We typically have 2 mindsets, heads down and heads up. There's a time and place to use both. In the heads down, we're actually gaining facts. We are completing tasks. We are checking boxes. This is normal business and school life. In heads up, we're observing. We're listening. We're questioning. We're almost back to our childlike ways. So why is it as we grow older that we take off the childlike hats and we think we know everything? If we continue to observe and question and learn, we can help others and ourselves in understanding and possibly suggest solutions to meet our needs. In the design thinking or in innovator's DNA, you must be observant. You must ask questions, network with others, experiment, and even associate items together. For example, how might common household appliances helping the solving your persona's problems? How might other industries and their processes or innovations help in solving your persona's problems? Try that sometime. As I stated in the beginning, I've been on my design thinking journey for about 7 years. I'm still in the infancy stage, and I try to use and grow my design thinking use daily. This journey will take years and years as I grow in understanding, as I grow in skills, and as I grow in areas of the process and methodologies. Like any other muscle, I continue to use my design thinking muscle at home and work to grow that muscle in everyday use. Not that I'm trying to solve the world's problems on a daily basis, but I try to gain that empathetic view of daily issues both personally and professionally, and then I associate those learnings into different areas of my work. And if you're not into muscles, another analogy would be, just like good wine, learning tools need to mature. Give both of them time and the outcome will be pleasurable. So now that we've discussed the elements of design thinking, let's see how to utilize design thinking going forward. At BEYONDigital, we've developed a 6-step framework, which each portion of our Discover, Design, Do process is embedded. In each phase of the framework, we work closely with our business clients in order to maintain alignment. Whether we're defining the targeted area or generating prototypes, this is a co-collaboration effort between the 2 companies to ensure we're working towards a common goal of solving the right problem for the right people. Although we guide our clients through the process, we allow them to contribute heavily, as that allows them to take ownership of the final solution. Having them as owners of the solution allows for easier approval and implementation throughout their organization. Over the next few slides, I will provide more information around each phase of this framework. In order to gain alignment on the task at hand, we first need to understand all the elements of the challenge. The challenge statement or problem is the key. However, through the process of design research, the problem may be reframed based off of insights discovered. The alignment is key to what is in scope and what's out of scope, along with the predetermined deliverables at the starting and ending point of the project. During the course of the project, new elements may be added. However, at least initially, the known can be agreed upon. We publish this document to the stakeholders and refer back to it as we go further into the process to ensure that we're heading in the right direction. Besides the research that our client provides us about themselves or the challenge area, there are two kinds of research that we conduct. First is our own research or design research, to immerse ourselves into the problem area, to put on our empathetic hats and learn more about the problem area from several different perspectives. This allows us to bring a point of view to our workshops and our client's challenge. The second part of research is the business research. This is seated by us and it's more collaborative with our clients. We want to understand if our client understands all the trends that are happening inside and outside of their industry, socioeconomic and behavioral trends that are happening that might affect their business, technology trends that may make their processes or themselves obsolete, even business process and concepts that need to be understood as they continue strategic initiatives within their company. These are used in context or inspiration during the phases of our framework. This brings us to the two-day workshop where we work with an interdisciplinary team between our two companies. Members of the clients include the sponsor, the business people, IT, insights, possibly legal, procurement, and more importantly, users. From our company, we have a facilitator, a UX designer, technology architects, and account team members to bring various perspectives. The typical workshop size is less than 20. However, it can be larger, but it's harder to manage. The workshop's really fun. They're energetic, they're engaging, and most importantly, they're structured to move rapidly forward to produce the co-collaborated results. We leave the workshop with the concepts and prototypes that can be assessed for desirability, feasibility, and viability. In the workshop, we start with personas. We develop these personas in 3 or 4 parts, almost the way we personally are constructed. The first being the I am. These are the facts, the name, the age, the gender, places of work, or what we do for a living. Information about the person that a journalist might gain from them. This is really the heads down information. The second part of the persona build is the I like. These are the wants, the needs, the hobbies, desires and motivations, things that a mom might ask or know about a person. The third is the I wish. These are the goals and the jobs to be done from a social, emotional, a functional perspective. Functional being, things that they have to perform or complete, like a specific task or a specific problem area. Social would be trying to look good, gain power, gain status. The emotional side would be aesthetics, the feel good, the security, and basic need would be, all around communication, safety, and sleep. The last step that we use are the pains. What are the persona's frustrations, the pains, the dislikes? These pains are critical to surfacing problems in the next step, as we're trying to eliminate the pains for our solutions. When we build out a complete person, you can now empathize with that person and you can start creating problems and concepts. We ask all workshop participants to become that person, to completely immerse themselves in their lives. Here are a few examples of the personas we built in other workshops. Hi, this is Sam. He is a Manchester United fan. He lives in Shanghai. That he'd love to attend a Manchester United match in England, but he can't afford to go there. So here are the attributes about Sam. You can see the I am, the I wish, and the I like phases of his life. And this is Martin. He's a makeup artist that works for a cosmetic brand called MAC. He loves working with his clients, and he wants to provide them with better service to meet their makeup needs. And this is Tanya, who is a single mother of an autistic child who shops at Ulta. She wants a way to get in and out of the store quickly in order to spend more time with her son. We build these personas out to make them to come to life. In every workshop we have to conduct, we want the participants to truly care about these personas and want to solve their problems. This is when we know we're on the right track. From personas, we start framing out problems based on the context we've gathered along with the needs and the goals of the persona established. Each problem must have a person, it must have a human motivation, it must have context, and it has to be solution-free. Context comes from the trends or from information we gathered separately or from information we gained in the workshop. So an example in the space that you're in might be, given that the entertainment industry glorifies sexual activity, how might ITP3 help Pam with understanding the implications of sexual activity so that she can live a socially accepted and connected lifestyle through those awkward teenage years? You know, around that we generate as many problems as possible, and in the workshops we vote on which problems are most relevant to our personas, and those are the ones that we take forward to resolution. Now comes the first part of the fun stuff, generating the ideas. Unlike analytical thinking, design thinking, it's a creative process based around the building up of ideas. There's no judgments early on in the design thinking phase. This eliminates the fear of failure and really encourages maximum input and participation in the ideation phase. We encourage and promote wild ideas, outrageous ideas, because that's what starts the creative juices in the creative process. Sometimes the wild ideas can be tamed. Other times the wild ideas can be built upon. We get the participants to combine ideas, which really creates an even better idea. For example, you know, the copier combined with the computer to become a fax machine. The computer combined with the phone to become the internet. Sometimes it takes getting two ideas in the same room to make an idea better. And then the connections happen. For example, did you know in the year 1 AD that the steam engine was created to open and close temple doors? However, the inventor did not know anyone in the shipbuilding industry. Otherwise, the two of them might have created the steam engine long before it finally happened. So sometimes you have to look for the associations where possible. So from ideas, we now focus on making those ideas come to life. We visually show representations of each idea in a very crude and a rough way. Through storyboards, wireframes, pictures, process, we paint the story of the idea in a concept form. This allows us to show and tell how we are solving the persona's problems. There are many types of prototypes that we can make during a workshop, and it's all based off of the initial alignment with the client. However, in the workshop, we can take some creative liberty to do more than what we projected to continue to spur that innovation. We start with very crude drawings of a solution, wireframes, and storyboards. These in general, they show the ideas and they show how these ideas actually come to life. And as I said, prototypes take on different forms, and we use different low-cost material to visually represent the final concepts. In these cases, cardboard, foam board, empty bottles, Play-Doh, all of these were used to allow the stories to be told. Pictures are worth 1,000 words. Well, prototypes must be worth 1,000,000 words. In our deliverable to our client, the rough wireframes become a tangible website or representation of a mobile application that allows them to see the screen sequence. This allows us to tell the story while they see the steps a person would go through. And a final piece may be a clickable prototype that allows a person to go from screen to screen with fake data. This shows them the power of the application that solves the need. Even though I represented it here as a linear fashion, in a clickable prototype you can go back and forth between each screen. Another prototype is a journey map. This one shows the daily life of a soccer fan. More importantly, it shows the touch points and the emotions of the user. This allows the client to see the journey of the user and how many touch points it actually has, and hopefully all the positive emotions. If there's any negative emotions, then we didn't obtain the ultimate goal of satisfying that persona's needs. Magazine covers is another form of prototyping, and this allows us to show the future state of the art of the possible. Each client can show what the headlines would be when they implement their innovation. And here is what the finished product looks like from what they did in the workshop on the previous slide to what we have done from a digital enhancement capability here in the final product. Storyboards, as with the wireframes, they really paint a story of the situation. This allows us to showcase the story and connect the value of the person and the value to the company. In this case, the Manchester United story was a joint collaboration with Adidas to create a kinetic sock to track movement. Sam was concerned about his son's exercise routine. Therefore, he got him these socks that allowed him to connect to his favorite Manchester United player and track his exercise against that player. This allowed him to gain a reputation and prizes as the exercise grew. Manchester United was able to sell more merchandise and connect more kids to players. This was both a win to Sam, his son, and to Manchester United. And this is another version of the storyboard. This one is for Diane, who's a frequent traveler. And as her story progresses from home to her car, to the airport, to the airline, there's many, many different touch points that we brought forward to our client to satisfy the needs of Diane. All of the artifacts created in the workshop that are tangible to the challenge are turned into these digital elements. From the summary of the workshop to the wireframes and 3D renderings, even the storyboards, we deliver these back to visually represent the concepts and the possibilities so our clients can take these to executives for funding approval. If we have to take the prototypes further, we do that through a service engagement with our delivery team. The last piece of our framework is the validation of the concepts. We're able to validate the feasibility through the technical architecture review. Then we validate the desirability by taking the prototypes to the user or the person in which this all started. We focus on the articulated needs, and usually through iterating with the user, we met the unarticulated needs as well. The viability is all about the implementation and sustainability of the solution within the organization or our client. How can they absorb the cost, or more importantly, how can they change the organization? These validations are key to moving those concepts forward to reality. So, in essence, design thinking works when you don't have a known solution, when the sky is really the limit, when trends start affecting your world and you're not sure what to do. However, design thinking can be an everyday practice as well when dealing with others, with friends, with families, and peers. I really hope that you take on design thinking going forward. So I just want to thank you for your time and patience and understanding through all of this information. But I assure you that the next presenter, Mary, will show you how design thinking pertains to the ITP3 program further. If you have questions or comments, please get a hold of me and let me know. Thank you.
This is me. I wanted to give an introduction to show you who is talking on the other side of the line. Since I can't see you, this is the person you can imagine who is talking to you right now. I'm Mary. I'm a visual designer. I spent my career so far working on communication design problems with multidisciplinary teams. I've worked on everything from how to get people to buy running shoes, to how to help women save money and interact with the physical bank in rural Kenya, to helping teens reduce their risk of getting chlamydia and gonorrhea. I'm especially passionate about work in the sexual health and reproductive space, and I've been lucky enough to work on a few amazing and very interesting projects. The thing that all these different projects have in common, they've all been solved using a human-centered design process. There are many variations of the process and ways to get at human desires and needs, but what I love is that each project, you can create different tools and prototypes to help you get at and solve the problems at hand in a really bespoke way. So my goal for the next 20-ish minutes is to share some behind-the-scenes stories of design research methods and design that illustrate a human-centered process and how this leads to design solutions on two different projects, Bedsider and Chat, which is the Chicago Healthy Adolescents and Teens program. So first I'm going to talk about Bedsider. Some of you on this call might be familiar with Bedsider. I know there's some national campaign folks on the line. And Bedsider, for those who don't know, is a birth control support network And since launching in 2011, it's grown to include many things like a provider portal, relationships with many clinics and college campuses. They have a strong social media following and much more. And they've empowered many women and men to make informed choices about their sexual health and birth control. I was lucky enough to work on this in the very beginning up and through the launch of BEYONDigital. So around 2008, a study had been published that said that 7 in 10 pregnancies to women between the ages of 18 and 29 were unplanned. This is adults, not teens. The national campaign reached out to IDEO, which I think, Rick, you mentioned is an innovation design consultancy that I called home for 11 years, because the national campaign wanted to do something to address this startling statistic. When I first heard about the project, I literally jumped out of my seat and ran to find the person who was putting together the team. And over the next several years, I got to work on multiple projects to bring BEYONDigital to life, touching everything from research to content strategy, to the website, to the logo and photography for the brand. Our challenge is to reduce the number of unplanned pregnancies in the United States, basically to change behavior in the face of one of the most powerful biological urges that people have. The first project, and there were several, is what we used to call a phase 0 project, meaning that when we set off at the beginning, we didn't know exactly what we would be making. It could have been anything, a new kind of condom, a TV PSA, or even rebranding birth control. A very broad project like this is a great example of why human-centered design is so important when tackling issues like this. And I know we've been talking about it, but human-centered design is pretty much exactly what it sounds like. It's the process that puts the real human needs, desires, especially those underlying latent desires, at the center first and foremost. Before tackling any problem, we talk to people to understand and gain empathy for what's really going on. So at the start of this first project, we went out and we talked to a bunch of humans about sex. At first we thought people would be nervous or hesitant to share, but that was really not the case. We quickly found that people would tell us all sorts of things and share all sorts of stories about their lives. When coming back to the national campaign, they're experts in the field, and in those early stages of the project, we weren't sharing anything that they didn't already know. But what we were able to do as designers was to put it into terms that they weren't used to hearing. Through human-centered design, we could help to deliver the emotion, the reality, and the feeling of what it felt like to be a scared 22-year-old woman who just missed her period. This shift in tone became an important differentiator for us throughout that entire project. And just for reference, this image contains some slides from a very early presentation to the national campaign where we shared some quotes and stories from the one-on-one conversations we'd had during our field research. And from those conversations, we had some big takeaways that we could design around. And at this point, we knew that whatever we designed would have to follow these things. So we refer to them as design principles sometimes, where there are these pivotal things that you know have to be considered when whatever you're designing. And for BEYONDigital, there were 5. The first was to honor the heat of the moment. We knew that whatever we designed had to do this. In the heat of the moment, all bets are off, and whatever we designed had to work around this moment, not interrupt it or work against it. We needed to connect sex with pregnancy, to break down the magical thinking, and just because it hasn't happened yet doesn't mean that you won't get pregnant. If you aren't using contraception, sex equals pregnancy. Teach adults like adults. So most adults have not had sex ed since 6th grade health class. They get all the information from a wide range of things, a wide range of sources from Cosmo magazine to porn, and we need to talk to them accordingly. And attack the excuses. There's so many excuses, let's just knock them down. And lastly, my favorite of these, which I'm gonna share more stories about, was to fit in visually and verbally. You might have seen some of these things before. These pamphlets, it feels really disconnected from sex or sexiness. When we talk to professionals or read papers, we often heard terms like intercourse and sexual debut. And at least back then, you'd see a range of these pamphlets, and again, nothing about this felt sexy or sex positive. You could see this, the website on the right-hand side is actually a woman who's looking for emergency contraception online. And granted, this is old and might not exist anymore, but she looks like she's shopping for a used car, not doing something that's integral to her life. Well, I'm going to zoom ahead and stay with me, because coming out of that very early phase 0 project, we also knew that we didn't want to address the problem with just one solution. We decided to focus on women initially and then to build a system of network solutions. So we built many prototypes and shared these with women and then iterated our designs along the way. In this image here on the screen, to illustrate this, first we created a fake brand, because we knew that whatever this service was, it had to be something other than the national campaign, so that it could connect directly into women and it be separate from the work they were doing in research and other places. So we temporarily called it Later Gator, and as in, you know, I might be ready to have a baby later, thank you. To illustrate the system and share with the national campaign, we built out this full-scale prototype experience for them that you see here, and we asked them to forget their preconceived notions and go on a journey with 3 different women who were in 3 different situations. We introduced them to these women through a series of photographs and the stuff that was like the contents of their bag, and then we asked them to put themselves in that person's shoes and go through a journey of discovering the different pieces and moments of this network system of support. To make a long story short, it was they liked it, and we all decided to move forward and figure out what the right way to bring this to life was, what was the right way to connect to women, and so we continued prototyping. And so in order to make that real, in the process, I'm going to share another prototype with you here. So in the process of designing and defining what the brand would be, we looked at a variety of names and tones of voice. We wrote a series of mantras that we would share with women. We had a group of women that we worked with throughout the project to bring Bedsider to life. There was, Bedsider was just one of the names, and it was popular, but again and again, women were coming back to another version as well called Total Betty. And for us, it didn't feel quite right, but we couldn't put our finger on it. We were just sharing the piece on the left, which is a sample mantra. And so in order to kind of get at a deeper understanding of why people would connect with this, we grabbed an Us Weekly magazine and cut a bunch of photos out of it. So the next group of women that came in, there was a next group of women that came in either one by one or with a friend, we asked them to read the mantra and then to choose a couple images to match it. So which women, or which sounded like the voice of the mantra. When they read Total Betty, they kept grabbing Tia Tequila. So it was 2009. I don't know if you remember that at the same time, Tia Tequila had a dating reality show on MTV. And and then Bedsider would often get paired with Beyonce or Tina Fey. And we talk about why. We have a conversation about what were the things that were connecting these real people to these things, and talked about, they described Tia Tequila or a Total Betty as kind of wild, or someone who liked to party. And then as we went through this conversation, they would turn to us and say, I don't think I want birth control advice from Tia Tequila. I think I want something else. And so the reason I'm sharing this tool is a very rough prototype, but it helped us to get at some of that deeper understanding, the underlying desires of how women that we wanted to talk about birth control and how they wanted to be spoken to. And it helped us hone in on a tone that would differentiate Bedsider from other sources of advice. Another prototype that we built was a texting service. So there was a birth control support reminder that you could sign up for. And we prototyped this early on with 30 different women, very DIY. The back end was very DIY. But we had 30 women, and we did a message testing we did 3 different types of messages with 3 different groups who had 3 different experiences over 3 months. The first group of women would get a text message at the same time that they had specified every day. And for example, I'll just use pill users as an example. So every day for pill users, they would get a text that said, it's time to take your pill, every day at the same time. The second group got a snooze alarm text. So you get the text, but unless you entered, I took my pill, it would keep going off every 30 minutes and texting you every 30 minutes until you answered. The third group got the same text as the first group did every day, but every day it would come with a little tidbit of information, a fun fact about sex, or maybe even a gross fact. So I don't know if you can guess which one was successful here, but this is the third. We found out that even though it was repetitive to get those text messages, the little snippets were something that women could look forward to and even like share with each other. And so this became part of the basis for the text messaging service moving forward. Lastly, I'll share one more Bedsider story. A couple design solutions that we prototyped were inspired directly from what we heard in the field. The Method Explorer that you see here is a tool for the web that enables viewers to toggle between different birth control methods and compare them side by side. And while this is very appealing from like a logical and rational point of view, it didn't address some of the human word of mouth sharing that we'd observed in the field. The word of mouth, however, is not always correct. So as I said earlier, myths and misconceptions are a huge hurdle when it comes to getting women medically accurate information about birth control. We'd heard women out in the field share stories about how they had heard about birth control, things like, you know, the secondhand information, like, oh, my best friend's cousin knew a girl who went on Depo and she made her crazy and she punched through a wall. Or I heard that everybody gains at least 50 pounds if they go on that pill. And so these stories and these things, they may have happened, but they miss the point that each person's body is unique and each person's situation is different. And so we had a wild idea. We set out to find some people who would use some of the different methods and to record real women in their own words, tell us what it was like for them, the good, the bad, the ugly. So to prototype this, first we asked women that we knew, and this is an image from a wireframe, and the women here who volunteered to do videos are women that I worked with at the time, to prototype making videos of themselves. And we shared these, and we found that it was actually extremely helpful and to have another way to learn about birth control. So to bring this to life, we went out and made it real. We interviewed 50 women across the country. They told us about their birth control in their own words, and we edited it down to make sure that everything they shared was medically accurate. You know, if they swore, if they told us some random fact about their lives, that was okay, as long as whatever they were saying was medically accurate. And since then, the national campaign, I've noticed, has added more and more videos at the time of women. They've also brought in men to hear, to be not only inclusive of men, but to hear other perspectives of people who use birth control or someone who experienced it from another side for their partner's method of choice. So I would just say that making these mini documentaries alone was an amazing experience, and I think I could probably keep talking about Bedsider for about 4 more hours. But I will stop here. I'm going to switch gears and talk about another project, which is more recent and connected to teens. So this is CHAT, the Chicago Healthy Adolescents and Teens. This is a project I started working with the Chicago Department of Public Health in March of this year while leading a team at IDEO, and I've been fortunate enough to continue collaborating with them as an independent designer after striking out on my own. The Chicago Department of Public Health, CDPH for short, has created a program which supports pregnancy prevention, sexual health education, and STI testing for teens in the Chicago Public Schools, CPS, and the city of Chicago. This is, just a fact here, Cook County, where Chicago is located, has the second highest number of reported cases of chlamydia and gonorrhea in the nation. So good reason to start to address these things. And just for everybody on the call, I know that you're part of a TTP grant. CDPH has a TTP 2B grant from HHS, Office of Adolescent Health, which began in July 1st of 2015. Their grant lasts for 5 years to fund a rigorous evaluation of programming, and their first year was designated for planning and refining of their intervention, and this is where my team and I came in to help them with this refinement. Our role in our projects, there have been 2 have been to take a closer look at this intervention program, to use human-centered design methods to update, revise, and to help improve it ahead of implementation of the evaluation portion of the grant, which is just about where we are today. I'm gonna take a drink. So my team and I have worked closely with the Chicago Department of Public Health and a range of stakeholders, including Chicago Public Schools, Office of Student Health and Wellness, and Planned Parenthood Illinois, who's currently facilitating all of the education and testing sessions in schools. Our design challenge was to work within the goals of this established sexual health education and STI testing intervention while tuning and refining the resources to better connect with their intended audience, which is high school students in Chicago. We're currently in the final stages of our engagement of the project. The intervention evaluation is ready to start in October, and we're currently waiting on a medical accuracy review, fingers crossed, on the some of the supplemental web resources that we have been building to support the program. So I'm going to talk about understanding the context and experience. So the in-school intervention program in broad strokes consists of the team going in and spending either a class period with students in the high school. It consists of an STI and sexual health education presentation. Then there's an optional confidential STI test that's done in the school, followed by a one-on-one meeting with a health educator for each student, whether they decided to test or not. And then if a student does test positive, afterwards there is follow-up and no-cost treatment will be provided for them. So one of the first things we did after observing several in-school sessions was to map out the journey of the intervention to better understand the context. What were the touch points for students? Where and how were they coming into contact with the intervention? What about the facilitators? What was their experience? The teachers, the school staff, parents, just kind of getting our heads around what the journey was or what the steps were of the overall intervention. So this, for us, became an underlying framework that we could use to understand and support and then really amp up moments that matter. There were 3 phases of this: the prep for the facilitators in schools, that's like letters home and logistics with the school, followed by the actual facilitation in the school, which is the presentation, the testing, and subsequent one-on-ones with health educators. And then lastly, there was some follow-up. But the follow-up was really only with the students who had tested positive for chlamydia and gonorrhea. So yes, the testing is only for chlamydia and gonorrhea, not for anything else. Should mention that. So in understanding the context and the experience, we shared and prototyped content with a number of student groups. We worked with several different student groups over multiple sessions, and we shared prototypes, got feedback, and did activities to get a better understanding of what they were curious about. So the images that you see on the screen here are from a couple of those activities. We have several activities to explore what they say they care about. So we dove into new territory with them. On the far left, like talking about a range of birth control methods and letting them to explain what they thought about each and what questions they had. We also ended each session with a secret ballot asking questions, and we found that students would often say that they knew something, but then secretly would have questions afterwards. We then presented multiple iterations of the content and gave presentations as that presentation was in progress of revamping, and we asked a lot of questions, and they observed us. There was a lot to take in. You can see here one of the slides on the far right, and in the middle is a survey that we had them fill out while we were talking, and gave us some direct feedback verbally, but then also we had this to follow up for the things that maybe they didn't want to say out loud. So they shared what they already knew and what they didn't and what they were uncomfortable saying out loud. We learned that even if they don't know or crave the answer, they want us to address them with respect. That kind of assume that they already know. When students feel like they're being told what to do, they were less motivated to act on the information. They gave us brutally honest feedback on the presentation, and the one big learning there was to make it relevant for everyone. Students have different types of relationships and needs, and when it comes to their sexual health, they believe they're not represented in the context of the delivery, they might disregard that education entirely. One example that we heard was a student who told us, he said, "You're always saying partner, partner, partner," but not everyone's in that kind of relationship. We realized that the way that some of the students were interpreting the word partner wasn't in the way that we were talking about sexual partners, but they were interpreting that as about a relationship. So it was very interesting. And then lastly, they asked us over and over, what happens next? We learned we needed to give them actionable guidance, but let them make their own decision. Students needed practical advice so they could feel empowered to make the right decisions regarding their sexual health. But they really wanted to know what they could do next to answer their questions or take another action. Checking time. Okay, so quickly to talk about visual and verbal tone of voice. As with Bedsider, striking the right visual and verbal tone was a huge opportunity to connect with students. We wanted to make sure that the messages would stick, that the information would connect with the intended audience, and we had an opportunity to discuss some of the ideas with those groups. Here are some activities that we did with them. On the left, we had them create a perfect confidant. We asked them, well, how would this person think or say, or what would they do for you? How would they make you feel? What would they never say? And this helped us to get at how they wanted to be spoken to. We created a few different scenarios, and we had them improv out how they would text a friend advice. We actually set 2 chairs back to back and had them act out different scenarios with a fake foam core phone. And we would ask them things, for example, like, what would you tell a friend who was worried they might have been exposed to an STI? We also shared images and mood boards and with them and talked about the visual styles that they gravitated to in their day-to-day lives. We heard things like, talk to me like you believe in me, that you respect me enough to tell me like it is and trust me that I'm going to make a good decision. Or, we have a teacher who always comes across really fake. He's always like, hey kids, with a Z, and he's not someone I would trust or want to talk to. We also heard something speaking directly to visuals and tone where, I don't want to get pulled out of a class because this is happening in the schools just to go to another class in school. I wouldn't hear half of it. You need to get our attention at the beginning and get us hooked. So what we learned from the students here through these tone activities is they really taught us what makes them feel comfortable talking about sexual health, that tone should convey empathy and sensitivity and approachability. And they showed us how to talk about things and what we should and shouldn't say, that language and communication should be straightforward and mature, but still relatable and not funny. And they helped us understand what good looks like to them. The look and feel should be bold and simple, as well as energetic and engaging. And the aesthetic style should feel current and relevant, but not overly complex. So these learnings helped us to evolve from this, which was the original presentation, which was more clinical, an STI-focused presentation where a lot of the relatability was resting primarily on the shoulders of the facilitators to, it looks like this, to a more visually rich, engaging and inclusive content sexual health presentation that could connect with students and complement the session. I'm not going to show the whole intervention. These are the front pages. So back to this map. I can go back to the map. There it is. So through the human-centered design process, we were later able to revisit this journey and identify opportunities to make impact and support both the program and the students' needs. So here I'm adding in, we identified moments that mattered to students, and then we amped up the design of those pieces that are highlighted here. We also added a layer of ongoing support to fill in some of the gaps and to address the continuing needs of the student beyond the quote-unquote one and done of the in-school intervention. I'll lastly share just a little bit about that support beyond the one and done, because for the last several months, we've been collaborating to build this resource, a mobile-friendly online resource that can be accessed by students at any time. And building this, of course, we continued to iterate and share share prototypes with students along the way. You see here some early wireframes from the design. We talked about social media and looked at the day in the life of their way they were online, talked about the way they search for information and content and what they had a good grasp of, but what they didn't have an understanding of, to make sure that the content was resonating, and also, again, talked about the tone of voice of relationships, because we're going to be addressing relationship issues. So this web resource reinforces the program and provides information for students in a friendly way, connects them to trusted local resources, clinics, and hotlines for STIs, pregnancy prevention, sexual orientation, gender identity, healthy and safe relationships, and body basics, basically like what parts do what and how does pregnancy happen. And last thing I'll say about this, most importantly, what we learned from them is that it had to be mobile friendly, because many students live on their phones, and phones equal privacy. Their laptops a lot of times are shared. So this is where we are today, and we're in the final stages of refinement of this and going through that medical accuracy review. And once those changes are made, the site will launch soon, so we can keep an eye. We can keep an eye and share later, maybe, which will be at chatabout.org. So I'm going to stop here and turn it back over to Kat, so if we have any questions and can end on time. But thank you so much for letting me share these stories. I'd be happy to talk about either of these projects and answer any questions the best way that I can.
Does anyone have any questions for either Mary or Rick?
Okay, so we have a question in for Rick. The question for Rick is, what challenges do you face working from the business perspective and moving into social sciences and vice versa?
Yeah, the challenges that we face are bringing the social sciences into those businesses. For example, at Estee Lauder, when we went out and did observation, we went into a Sephora store. And in the Sephora store, we saw a woman pick up the lipstick, put it on her lips, and then put it back. And we thought that was odd, but then 5 minutes later, another lady walked up and grabbed the same lipstick and put it on and put it back. And so we brought that up to Estee Lauder, saying, again, here you're talking about germs, you're talking about bacteria. Is there something that we can help with? So again, you know, we're looking at social things like that, or even communications, bringing into the business and making it light to them. In most cases, they don't. We don't work with them from a social perspective or the social behavior perspective, but we're starting to do that more and more as we're starting to build our research team and doing more research on that behavioral side.
Okay, we also had a question for Mary. The question was, can you talk a little bit more about any resistance you may have faced from teachers and or other adults developing the intervention?
I can speak a little bit to that. I think that during this process, my team was working directly with CDPH and the CPS, the Chicago Public Schools Office of Adolescent Health and Wellness, and so they were really insulating us. They were working on that's sort of more in their domain, and they were insulating us from that. So my main involvement was to work directly with teams and to get an understanding what CPS policies and city policies were, and letting them navigate what we could or couldn't do, and we worked together to find some compromises along the way. We did talk about having something that has sex in the title, but at the end of the day, with this presentation, and the intervention, it's not just about STIs, it's about sex, it's about pregnancy prevention, STIs, and it's also talking about relationships, and all in a very inclusive way, so it's more holistic, and so therefore we wanted to call it like it was. And the feedback that we heard from students was loud and clear, although I didn't personally, in my team's research, we didn't speak with parents. So that kind of answers half your question.
We have another question. I believe this is, Mary, to you. What did you do in your process when you were developing chat to include affirm LGBTQ youth?
Yes, so a few things. Let me just make some notes here. So a few things. For one, we worked with the Chicago Public Schools and looked at the curriculum that had been developed through the Chicago Public Schools, to the inclusivity trainings that they were teaching us about what was going on in the schools, and using their curriculum and working from that. That was one side of it. And the other side of it is within the student groups, we talked to each of the student groups about this. And specifically, once we had the site and the content close to final before we went to medical accuracy review, we did a session with students, with a group of students from the Illinois Safe Schools Alliance, and the Alliance is very active in helping to organize students to put gay straight alliances, GSAs, into their schools. We worked with them and shared with the students, and they gave us a lot of feedback and things that were things that influenced the way we talk about some things and tone of voice, as well as, oh, maybe that's missing, maybe we should add that down the line. And then we also spoke with an expert advisor, a school counselor working within a Chicago Public School, who also is the mentor for the Gay Straight Alliance in her school. So we definitely wanted to include a lot of different voices in the project.
Sure. Another question for both Mary, you and Rick. Can you both talk about how you use personas throughout this process, and then how they're created, beyond how they're created, but when and how do you pull them back in? When do you move from a persona to a real person?
Well, from my perspective, we use personas from the beginning to the end. Even when we're out doing our own research before the workshop begins, we are doing our design research and bringing that perspective. So we actually build out a persona on our own before we go into a workshop. In the workshops themselves, we ask the participants, and typically in the last workshop we did, we had 4 tables with 5 people at each table. So each table created their own persona and utilized that throughout the entire workshop, because it always goes back to the person. We're finding the problems of the person, we're finding the ideas to take care of the problem, and then the creation of the prototypes. And how we pull the person or move from persona to real person is in that last stage of the validation. Is once we created the prototype, then we take it out to people, whether it's that persona, per se, or other personas. We just take it out to people and say, here was a situation that this person had a problem, and here's some ideas. Will this take care of that idea? And that's how we do it with personas throughout.
Thank you, Mary.
Sure. So for me, sometimes we use personas and sometimes we don't. In the chat work, we weren't really using a persona because we were working from something that was already existing. But in Bedsider, personas could be a useful tool sometimes, especially to be a proxy for the real people, because the people the men and women we were talking to in research, we wanted to keep their identities confidential. So we would sometimes use them to inspire, to talk about a fictionalized version of themselves, so that we could talk about real issues and real stories, but protect identities. Where we did really bring personas into the work, at Bedsider, I shared a slide with some of the very early prototypes, which later became Bedsider, and we built 3 kind of full-scale immersive prototypes, personas of women, to illustrate a situation and allow our clients to put themselves in that person's shoes. So for example, with Bedsider, we had a woman who was 19, lived with her grandparents, didn't have access to a computer on a daily basis, didn't have a smartphone, and to get a sense of her life so that you could walk through the journey in a very analog sense, We also used a persona of someone who was more connected, and we had a persona of a person who was in a clinic setting where we would meet them when they had just gone to go and get an abortion with their boyfriend. So we use those personas to get people into the mindset of for the client and for anyone we're trying to explain our designs to. We use those personas to sort of set the stage for the journey through the work.
And one other thing I'll mention about that is, you know, as Mary just alluded to, sometimes the personas that you're working on are obvious. You know, let's take, for example, teen pregnancy. The first thing in my mind that comes together is an adolescent female. But now start looking at extreme people as well. Think about the male, because he has a part in that as well, the parents, possibly friends, administrators, anybody that might touch that person's life. So, so when you build out personas, we also try to build out those extremes, because, you know, half the education is going to go to the male, half the education is going to go to people she associates herself with. And if we touch those, we hit the sweet spot, which is, in my mind, that you know, adolescent female.
That's a good point. So we don't have any other questions today. If you have questions that you think of later, you can always email us. We have contact information on our website.